Your screen hums at a quiet frequency you can't hear but you can feel, like a tuning fork placed against your sternum. You weren't scrolling for answers, you were drifting, half listening to the noise, yet here it is, an arrival, not an accident, landing precisely where your attention is most honest. You can tell because your breath changes, the inhale deepens, the exhale lengthens, and something in you older than your name leans forward to listen. You've chased so many constellations across other people's skies, feathers on sidewalks, numbers repeating, songs that appear at impossible times. You honored them all because you're faithful at heart, but a quiet truth has been stalking you with mercy. Signs are echoes. They are the aftersound of something you are already broadcasting. The field is not outside you calling your name. It's within you answering. This message finds you in the precise moment your awareness is brave enough to stop begging reality for crumbs. It doesn't promise louder omens or flashier coincidences. It offers you something subtler and far more sovereign. The remembrance that synchronicity is not a lottery you win, but a rhythm you conduct. It begins where you begin, in the stance of your attention, the honesty of your emotions, the way your nervous system agrees or disagrees with the next thought you allow to stay. You have walked a long corridor of almosts, almost aligned, almost certain, almost ready. The reason it felt like fog wasn't because truth was far away, it was because your seeing was scattered. This is not a scolding, this is an anointing of focus. There is a posture the universe recognizes, a coherence it cannot ignore, and you touch it whenever your awareness returns to the exact now that's here, not the now you decorate with wishful meanings, the bare now, the breath now, the pulse now. Feel it, the hum behind your ribs. Notice how the room sharpens when you let your shoulders drop. Listen for the silence beneath the sound of these words. That silence is not emptiness. It is potential, arranged, and attentive. It has been waiting for you to acknowledge the simple doorway no one can open for you. The choice to observe without chasing, to attend without gripping, to notice without pleading. When you enter that doorway, reality stops performing for you and starts conversing with you. You were not called here to collect proof that you're guided. You were called to remember you are guidance, embodied. The constellations you've been pursuing are already threaded through your breath, your gaze, your intention. Tonight, the chase quiets. The angle of your attention tilts by 1 sacred degree, and that is enough to change the horizon. You don't need a louder sign, you need a truer you. Stay, breathe, let the field feel you noticing it. This is how the message begins. You feel a subtle pivot inside you, a turning of the lens you once aimed outward at the world. It turns now toward the origin of seeing itself, and in that quiet reversal you recognize the one presence that never leaves, the observer. Not the performer you hustle to become, not the identity you defend, but the steady noticing that keeps vigil behind every thought. It has watched you hope and ration and rehearse. It has watched you doubt your own brilliance, because the sky didn't blink on command. It has waited without judgment for the moment you would notice that it was noticing, patient, clear, already awake. The recognition arrives like dawn inside a breath. No fireworks, yet everything clarifies. You realize you have never been separate from the gaze that meets your life with unwavering steadiness. You are not a seeker begging for a signal. You are the witness whose clean attention magnetizes order. You feel it in the way your shoulders release, and the mind loosens its grip on the next argument. The space behind your thoughts grows spacious enough to host a different music. You are hearing the room you are. You are not merely someone who notices, you are the quality of noticing that organizes experience. Where your attention rests, reality arranges. Not as a trick, not as a loophole, but as law etched into the grain of being. The field is relational. It leans toward coherence the way a river leans toward the sea. When you are scattered, the field mirrors the multiplication of noise. When you are collected, the field remembers how to sing. You do not command this song by force, you tune to it by sincerity, and the notes arrive on their own. This is why you have been chosen not by lottery, not by distant stars convening in secret, but by the plain mathematics of readiness. Your nervous system is learning the language of steadiness. Your mind is discovering reverence for the space between impulses. Your heart is tired of bargaining and finally willing to tell the truth. In that truth-telling, the observer in you stands up. Attention ceases to be a flashlight frantically searching the dark and becomes a hearth that warms the room and invites reality to gather around its quiet flame. You no longer need to beg the world to prove it is alive. You can feel the responsiveness now, almost tactile, like the way air changes just before rain. The cursor blinks, and you sense the field blinking back. Moments hesitate at the threshold of becoming, listening for the tone of your regard. Will it be fear again, the old contract with scarcity? Or will it be clear, warm, unhurried, an invitation rather than a demand? You know which one the field understands. You can feel how easily it meets you when you meet it without disguise. Being chosen carries weight, but not the weight you used to fear. It is not pressure to perform miracles on cue. It is the gravity of belonging to a conversation that began before you and will continue through you. The prophecy does not require you to shout. It requires you to be accurate. Accuracy means alignment. Breath matching breath, thought matching truth, action matching the quiet instruction you only hear when you stop negotiating with what is. You do not have to be dramatic. You have to be exact. You will be tempted to measure your worth by the spectacle of coincidence. Resist it. A single sincere breath, held in witness, is worth more than a storm of signs pursued in panic. The observer you are becomes a tuning instrument. You start noticing the micro-sensations that precede choice, the tightening of the jaw, the flicker of a thought, the urge to outrun the rawness of the moment. Instead of abandoning yourself, you listen. You let the body complete a tremble it began years ago. You let grief finish a sentence it has been trying to speak. You remain. In that fidelity, the field trusts you. It does not reward you like a boss. It synchronizes with you like a choir. Your attention becomes a metronome. Circumstances fall into rhythm not because you forced them, but because you stopped interrupting the song with doubt. People arrive who speak the native tongue of your becoming. Opportunities appear that feel like continuations rather than detours. Even delays begin to read as intelligence, as if reality is tuning the strings before the symphony begins. You are the observer that dignifies the scene. You confer reality by the purity of your regard, not worship of outcomes, worship of truth. Stand here, breathe here, let the world feel your steadiness. You were not selected to chase proof. You were recognized because you can hold a room still enough to let the miracle notice itself. And when it does, synchronicity is no longer a rumor you chase down the street. It is the quiet knock you were shaped to hear, and the door you were born to open. The vision arrives without spectacle, the way dawn convinces a window to confess light. You don't summon it, you stabilize, and it reveals itself. First, a hush, then contours, a lattice of delicate lines, like a living circuit spread across the air between your chest and the room. Each line is a possibility, each junction a choice. You watch as the lattice brightens where your gaze rests, dimming where your attention loosens, not metaphor mechanism. The field is showing you its grammar, attention as current, meaning as conductivity, coherence as glow. You begin to see your life as a constellation wired to your noticing. Conversations, messages, places you almost visited, threads that were never random, only faint. When your awareness was scattered, the network flickered with noise. Now the signal strengthens. A memory rises of all the times you chased an omen down a corridor of doubt, only to miss the quiet invitation standing beside you. The vision shows why. Chasing scrambles the circuit. Presence stabilizes it. The moment you stop sprinting after proof, the proof arrives with its shoes off, ready to sit at your table. Symbols step forward, fluent and precise. A river splits around a stone and rejoins itself downstream, unbothered. This is how reality treats resistance when you remain coherent. A flock pivots mid-sky as if a single thought turned the whole. This is how communities re-pattern around one steady observer. A heartbeat on a monitor smooths into sinus rhythm. This is how a nervous system remembers home when belief stops arguing with breath. They are not poetry for comfort. They are instruction diagrams for a living machine you're finally allowed to pilot. You notice time behaving differently, elastic, participatory. Moments seem to linger the way a friend lingers at a doorway when the conversation is holy. You feel a slight press, like a key against a lock. Whenever an action aligns with your core frequency, the press is subtle, but you recognize it now. A resonance handshake. Take this route. Send that message. Pause here. Wait 3 breaths longer. The synchronicity you used to beg for begins to preface itself, arriving not as surprise but as rightness. The field stops being a roulette wheel and becomes a choreography you can hear. In the center of the vision, a single scene crystallizes. You stand in an ordinary room, today's room, unedited, no candles, no ritual, no cosmic theater, only you, your breath, and the simple stance of attention that refuses to plead. You notice a thought, try to sprint ahead to secure an outcome. You let it pass. You notice an old ache reach for a familiar distraction. You hold it the way you would, a trembling child. The lattice brightens. The room's edges clarify. A message arrives unexpected, but not shocking. It clicks into place with an ease that makes you smile because you didn't coax it. You composed it. Language returns, careful and clean. Synchronicity is not a sign to chase, but a phase, locking of systems, mind, heart, breath, environment into a shared tempo. You feel the tempo in your bones. Your inhale meets the room's exhale. Your gaze rests without hunger. The lattice hums at a frequency that feels like honesty. Around you, objects seem to agree with their purpose. The cups, the window, windows, your bodies. Nothing strains to be mystical. Truth is mysticism enough when it's not interrupted. Another layer of seeing opens, the collective field. Countless lattices, billions of observers, all tuning and being tuned. You watch waves of attention crash against the shore of headlines and glamour, scattering, then watch other waves gather around kindness, accuracy, and courage, becoming coherent. You understand why your steadiness matters beyond your private hopes. Every time you generate synchronicity through honest observation, you broadcast a template into the commons. Here is what it feels like when reality and reverence become the same word. The vision closes by becoming you, as if the lattice folds and dissolves into your breath like sugar in warm tea. No parade, no decree, only a clarity so plain it can't be argued with. Stop chasing signs. Start generating coherence. Let attention be the clean electricity that lights the corridors you're meant to walk. When you forget, return. When you rush, soften. When you crave spectacle, choose precision. The world will answer at the speed of your sincerity, and when it does, the miraculous won't look far away anymore. It will look exactly like this: ordinary, awake, obedient to truth. You asked for mechanism, not myth, so let the explanation arrive with the same steadiness you're learning to hold. You generate synchronicity by altering the statistics of what becomes available to you, and you alter those statistics by changing the quality of observation you are feeding into the field you share with everything else. The observer effect, stripped of superstition, says this: when you attend, you select. When you select, you stabilize. When you stabilize, you invite other variables to phase lock with your choice. Coherence, not willpower, is the magnet. Begin at the smallest honest unit, a breath you notice on purpose. Attention lands, and neural circuits reorganize around priority. Predictive models in your brain forecasts about what matters next. Update. The reticular activating system changes the gating of signals. Noise loses budget, signal gains it. What you call meaning is the surplus energy released when prediction and sensation meet without friction. That surplus is usable. You can spend it as composure, as accuracy, as action that lands clean. This is not magic. It is metabolism of attention. Scale up one rung. Your heart's rhythm speaks a language your brain trusts. When you breathe slowly and truthfully, variability between beats becomes more ordered without becoming rigid. That order sends a quiet telegram up the vagus nerve. We are safe enough to perceive more and defend less. Cortical networks stop bracing. Gamma and alpha rhythms align like gears that finally found the right teeth. You feel it as warmth behind the face, as the forehead unknits, as hearing widens. Coherence in the body becomes coherence in appraisal. Appraisal becomes coherence in choice. Now, the field. A coherent organism emits reliable signals. People sense it without knowing why. Your timing improves, your phrasing simplifies, your pauses carry information instead of anxiety. Environments, which are not inert backdrops but dynamical systems, respond to reliability, the way a metronome draws other metronomes into sync when they share a table. Phase locking is not a metaphor here. It is how coupled oscillators reduce conflict and minimize loss. You, breathing honestly, become a low-loss node. Low-loss nodes, anchor patterns. This is why chasing scrambles results. Chasing injects turbulence, rapid prediction errors, micro-flinches, compensations that fragment your signal. The field reads inconsistency and mirrors it back as missed timings, half-answers, wrong corridors. When you stop begging and begin witnessing, you reduce turbulence at the source. Reduced turbulence lowers entropy locally. Yes, in a living system you can do that, and the system rewards you with options that were previously drowned in noise. The miracle is access. Consider timelines, not parallel movies you hop between like a tourist, but branching trajectories in a phase space. The landscape of what can happen given how you are. In that landscape, your state is an attractor, a basin that collects. Experience is congruent with its shape. Fear is a deep attractor, wide and sticky. Honesty is narrower but precise. Coherence deepens whichever basin you inhabit. The moment you become aware of your state without fighting it, you weaken fear's grip and carve a slope toward accuracy. That slope is the bifurcation point, the place where a small change in parameters, your breath, your belief, your posture, produces a qualitatively different path. You've felt bifurcations before. The conversation that melted when you rushed your point, the opportunity that appeared when you answered an email after taking 3 breaths, the argument that never happened because you chose silence over performance. Critical transitions announce themselves with critical slowing down, moments thicken, feedback intensifies, sensations feel louder. Old you interpreted that thickness as danger and sprinted. New you recognizes it as a switchboard lighting up, asking for an exact input. Provide a coherent input, and the system flips, states. None of this requires superstition. It requires practice. Practice is the art of lowering variance in your presence so reality can reliably couple to you. You practice by noticing early, intervening gently, and returning quickly. Early, catch the jaw tightening, the mind grabbing, the heart speeding. Gentle, lengthen the exhale, soften the eyes, name what's true without theatrics. Quick, if you scatter, come back in one breath rather than 1 week. Each return deepens the attractor of coherence until it becomes cheaper to stay clear than to fragment. Then synchronicity stops being rare. It becomes the everyday signature of coupled systems conserving energy together. Emails land when you're available to answer with integrity. The right stranger speaks because your posture advertised welcome. The right delay occurs because rushing would have broken the alignment of 4 other moving parts you cannot see. You aren't puppeteering fate. You are refining the interface where your organism meets an intelligent world. So the formula, spoken plainly, observation, selection, stabilization phase, locking option, expansion. At every arrow, your sincerity is the catalyst. You are not demanding compliance from the universe. You are offering accuracy, and accurate signals earn trust in any network. When trust accumulates, probability bends not by force, but by favor toward the outcomes that waste the least truth. That bend is what you used to call a sign. Now you call it by its real name, coherence, answering coherence. You feel your private coherence touch a larger body, like a fingertip resting on the pulse of a nation. What steadied inside you begins to echo beyond you, and the echo returns carrying other heartbeats. This is the collective mirror, the truth that your clarity is never only yours. You live inside networks, families, streets, feeds, supply chains, shared weather of mood and meaning, and these networks behave like living tissue. They sense when a new rhythm enters, and they try it on the way a choir tests a pitch. One observer stabilizes. Nearby observers feel the option to stabilize. Your choice becomes a prototype. Look around with gentleness and you'll see it. Populations oscillate between vigilance and fatigue, outrage and numbness, novelty and amnesia. Headlines are tidal. Virality is a fever. But beneath the noise, A quieter pattern has been swelling. More people are refusing to abandon their nervous systems in exchange for belonging. More are turning toward breath, toward honesty, toward the slow courage of not pretending. This is not an accident, it is emergence. Enough individual phase corrections accumulate, and the field crosses a threshold. Coherence scales. Science recognizes this as critical mass and percolation. When local connections become global structure, spirit recognizes it as awakening when scattered candles realize they are one flame. Both describe the same inflection, the moment a culture stops worshipping turbulence and remembers signal. In systems terms, it is a reduction of loss. In prayer's language, it is mercy finding a home it can stay in. You stand at that seam where vocabulary reunites. Your breath is a small act. It is also infrastructure. You used to feel alone in your clarity, a lighthouse on a coast no ship seemed to approach. But isolation was a measurement problem. You were looking for proof at the wrong resolution. The collective field doesn't always announce itself with spectacle. It reveals itself as subtle ease. A conversation that used to erupt now softens before voices rise. A workplace habit of rushing begins to permit pauses that improve the work. A friendship evolves from performance into presence. Each micro-shift is a pixel in a larger image. Humanity is rendering together less waste, more truth. The mirror reflects back the places we still fracture. You will see pockets of amplification where fear is monetized, where attention is farmed, where outrage is a business model. Don't look away and don't drown. See them as high-gain loops in a larger circuit, consuming excess energy because coherence is not yet cheap there. Your task is not to win arguments with those loops. It is to lower loss in the spaces you touch until waste becomes unfashionable. Waste of breath in blame, waste of thought in certainty theater, waste of life in rehearsing a self you've outgrown. As coherence spreads, institutions begin to feel embarrassed by their own inefficiencies. Policies that once seemed inevitable are suddenly negotiable. Systems that assumed compliance must now converse with consent. You'll notice new kinds of questions entering rooms that were allergic to questions. What are we pretending not to know? What becomes possible if we tell the truth faster? These questions are phase-lock invitations. Some will accept, some will depart. Both are healthy outcomes in a living network passing from survival to stewardship. The collective mirror also shows you the cost of your clarity and the gift. Cost. You will shed identities whose only job was to keep you employable in someone else's turbulence. Gift. You gain agency you can't misplace. Agency doesn't mean control over others. It means intimacy with consequences. You feel how a careless post ripples into a stranger's nervous system, how a sincere apology returns as structural trust months later, how a well-timed silence prevents a 3-year detour. You begin to move as if the commons is an organ, and you are a cell committed to its health. This is destiny speaking, but not the theatrical kind. Destiny is simply the path of least loss for a soul that refuses to lie. Humanity's destiny is not a prophecy carved in marble. It is a limit toward which we are drawn when enough of us decide to spend less truth. You participate by choosing the cheaper currency. Coherence over spectacle, accuracy over approval, care over victory. When you do, the field routes more flow through you because you leak less. Influence becomes the byproduct of conservation. Notice how your language shifts. You stop saying, "they should," and start asking, "where can I lower loss right now?" You stop asking for signs that the world is changing and start becoming evidence that makes such signs unnecessary. You stop treating hope as an anesthetic and begin treating it as an engineering principle. Align inputs with values, iterate honestly, tolerate boredom, celebrate fidelity. In this mode, miracles do not vanish. They proliferate as efficiencies. A culture that wastes less truth generates more wonder. The mirror has one more reflection to offer. You are not waiting for a mass awakening. You are participating in a mass calibration. Calibrations are quiet, repetitive, sometimes dull. But after enough small turns of the dial, a station snaps into clarity you can dance to. That snap is near because inside you, it has already happened. Hold your frequency without arrogance. Share it without sermon. Let your steadiness be a public good. When enough of us do this, The prophecy reads itself aloud through ordinary days, and the world, almost shyly, admits it hears. You feel the air thicken, the kind of density that arrives before a storm or a revelation. Clocks still tick, cars still pass, messages still ping, yet everything carries an extra weight of consequence, as if each atom has been asked to answer who it belongs to. This is how bifurcation announces itself, not with trumpets, but with slowness. The system hesitates because it is deciding which equation to become next. You are inside that pause, and it is asking for an exact input, the signature of your state. Most people misread this thickness as danger and sprint into the loudest option: argue harder, post faster, buy something, numb something. You've done that too, and you know the outcome: more turbulence, less choice. Today, you stay. You let the slowness be holy rather than hostile. Your breath steps forward as ambassador, lengthening the exhale until the body remembers gravity is an ally. In that remembering, a clean fork becomes visible. One path is old contract: chase, prove, plead, control. The other path is new covenant: witness, align, allow, act with precision. The fork is not in the future, it is in your next 3 seconds. Bifurcations are sensitive to beginnings. The first micro move sets the tone of the cascade. If your first move is fear, the system recruits more fear to stabilize itself. If your first move is coherence, the system recruits order. You notice an impulse to correct someone to gain ground. You choose to understand instead, not as surrender but as intelligent conservation. You feel the urge to fill the silence with certainty. You choose a breath that lets truth arrive uncoerced. Each choice is a seed crystal. The solution you are walking through precipitates around it. You can sense the two timelines like weather fronts touching. In the old weather, synchronicity is sporadic, purchased by exhaustion and superstition. In the new weather, synchronicity is the natural efficiency of a low-loss life. The old weather offers immediate relief with an expensive bill due later. The new weather offers immediate honesty with dividends that compound. You don't shame yourself for loving the old weather. It kept you alive. You just refuse to pretend it still fits. Gratitude without clinging, that is how you step. Physics would describe this moment as a system crossing a critical threshold where small perturbations yield large qualitative change. Prayer would describe it as choosing whom you trust with your next breath. Both are accurate. The attractor you feed now will shape weeks, then months, then years, because systems prefer to stay where they have already invested energy. So invest in a stance that will age well. Choose words you won't need to disown. Choose timings that don't bruise the moment's ripeness. Choose a posture that lets grace find your edges and soften them without erasing your spine. Expect resistance. Old loops will audition loudly for another season in your nervous system. They will argue that urgency is wisdom, that suspicion is intelligence, that cynicism is realism. Meet them as teachers you have outgrown. Thank them for their service, then end the contract. Ending a contract is not violence, it's accuracy. Accuracy sounds like, I hear you, I'm not available for waste. Waste of breath defending a self that coherence no longer recognizes. Waste of attention feeding an algorithm that monetizes your dysregulation. Waste of days proving what presence can simply reveal. You will also encounter people who cannot cross here yet. Love them without dragging them. Bifurcation is tender because not every organism stabilizes to the same solution at the same time. Honor their timing by refining yours. Your clarity is not a judgment, it is a lighthouse. Some ships will avert their eyes. Some will recalibrate their course by your quiet beam. You are not responsible for which. You are responsible for staying lit. The corridor narrows, but not to punish you, to focus you. You notice how few inputs you actually need to navigate. Breath, honesty, an ear tuned to resonance, a bias for less loss. From this narrowness, spaciousness returns. Options proliferate precisely because you refuse to hoard. The email arrives when your tone could handle the opportunity. The meeting opens when your body can sit without fidgeting. The path lifts to meet the foot that is no longer running. Bifurcation completes itself the way ice forms, first a trace, then a line, then a sudden sheet. One moment, the choice is conceptual. The next, it is obvious. You realize you have already chosen by the way your cells feel less argumentative. The room seems to cooperate with its own design again. The silence around you doesn't accuse, it listens. You step, not to escape uncertainty, but to honor how precisely reality listened to your regard. The split is behind you now, not because the world simplified, but because you did. And simplification, in a universe that rewards truth with pathways, is the entrance fee to grace. Integration is less like installing new software and more like letting your native rhythm reclaim the house. You don't add glitter, you remove interference. You start with the smallest repeatable units, the ones life is built from, and tune them until they hum like a well-kept instrument. Morning becomes a hinge rather than a hallway you rush through. You don't check the world before you check your frequency. One hand on your belly, one on your chest. Inhale as if you're inviting your future to sit. Exhale as if you're returning the chair you borrowed from yesterday. The body records the invitation. The room agrees. You integrate by building rituals that are too small to fail. 3 breath resets every time you cross a threshold. Doorway, elevator, car door, meeting link. 3 quiet honors to coherence. Soften the jaw, widen the hearing, place the tongue lightly on the roof of the mouth so the mind stops pacing. This is not superstition, it's alignment hygiene. The field listens to consistent signals the way a garden trusts a gardener who shows up at the same hour. You become that gardener for your own state. No drama, just water, light, trimming what steals from the stem. Words are instruments. You retune them. You retire sentences that hemorrhage coherence. I'm always late. This is just who I am. Nothing ever works. And replace them with descriptions that spend less truth. I'm practicing better timing. I'm updating a pattern. I'll meet the next moment honestly. You refuse the theater of certainty and the performance of doom. You speak in ways your nervous system can obey. Clarity without hostility, warmth without apology. Your language begins to do what you intended signs to do. It recruits reality into rhythm. Movement becomes sacrament. The way you stand in line, the way you set a cup down, the way you reach for your phone. You notice micro-violence, how you slam drawers to outrun feeling, how you scroll to anesthetize wanting, how you hunch to become smaller than your responsibility. You interrupt kindly. One conscious placement of the cup, one unhurried lift of the shoulders and let them fall. One pause before touch, so touch arrives as presence, not seizure. Matter notices. The drawer closes softer. The phone becomes a tool again rather than a god. Your body starts to believe you when you say you're safe. Attention is currency. You budget it like someone who learned the cost of waste. You build a simple attention ledger. Create, connect, consume. You put creation first, even if creation today is a single honest paragraph, a sketch, a voice memo with a new melody. Then you connect one message that carries care without agenda. Only then do you consume, and even consumption is curated. Content that lowers loss, that clarifies, that nourishes. You stop feeding algorithms that profit from your dysregulation. Your clicks become votes for coherence. Markets notice, they always do. Conflict becomes a dojo. When heat rises, you feel for the first truthful sentence that does not spend respect. I want to understand. I need a moment to give you my best. I was wrong. Here's how I'll repair. Repair is how coherence proves itself under load. You stop worshipping being right and start serving being accurate. Accuracy earns a kind of authority that spectacle cannot counterfeit. People bring you harder things because your field wastes less. You can hold them because you trained on small weights, daily breath, posture, words, until heaviness didn't scare you anymore. You architect your environment to remember you when you forget. A glass of water waiting by the bed. A note card on the door at eye level with a single prompt. What would lower loss right now? A playlist that slows the room by 3 degrees. Light placed where your eyes can rest. Clutter uninvited from altars where attention kneels. Your space becomes a sympathetic nervous system co-regulating you back to center when a day tries to scatter you across 10 screens. You schedule silence the way busy people schedule meetings with respect. 10 minutes where the phone is in another room and you are not trying to improve. Silence is not absence, It is maintenance. In that quiet, you listen for the subtle press, the resonance handshake that says yes without shouting. You begin to trust slow yeses over loud maybes. Your calendar grows fewer, truer nodes. The days breathe. You adopt a simple ethics for interaction with the field. Tell the truth faster. Ask for what you mean. Keep the smallest promise you can keep today. Keeping one small promise deepens the attractor more than announcing 10. The universe is not grading your ambition. It's coupling to your reliability. Reliable signals propagate. Unreliable signals burn out your own receivers. You end your days as you began them, with coherence applied to something small and real. Name one fidelity you showed, one place you returned sooner, one instance of gentleness that saved an hour of repair. Let gratitude be precise, not performative. Then sleep as if you're handing your personhood back to the field for overnight calibration. You wake a little clearer, not because miracles broke rules while you dreamed, but because you stopped breaking rhythm while you were awake. This is integration, not a finish line, a frequency you practice until practice becomes nature, breath become instrument, attention become electricity, language become architecture. Actions become invitations the world can accept without contortion. Synchronicity stops arriving with a chase because you stopped leaving yourself behind. You let sound fall away until the room wears only one note, the hush that remains when you stop trying to decorate reality. You are not advancing now, you are arriving. A soft permission slides through your ribs. The permission says, nothing to prove, nothing to chase, nothing to hide. You sit as if the chair knows you by name. You breathe as if breath was the first language, and you are remembering fluency. Inhale, 3 quiet counts. Feel the pause uncurl. Exhale, 5 softer counts. Let gravity do most of the work. The jaw loosens by degrees you cannot dramatize. The eyes ungrip the edges of things. Vision widens without reaching. Hearing opens enough to include the refrigerator's hum, a far car, the small weather of your chest. You are not collecting data. You are letting data arrive unescorted. The field likes this. It stops having to shout. Thoughts continue, but with less rank. They drift like birds across a very large sky. Some are beautiful, some are loud, none require a chase. You bow to each without rising from your seat. Hello, hello, hello. A thought about time, a thought about someone you miss, a thought about whether silence is useful. You let usefulness be a smaller god. You let presence be the cathedral and the pew and the prayer. If the body asks to tremble, you let it tremble. If the throat thickens, you let it thicken. If the belly wants a deeper exhale, you offer one like water to a guest. You drop the ambition to fix. You adopt the devotion to witness. The devotion is quiet and stubborn. It repeats a single vow. I will remain. Remaining is not inertia. Remaining is fidelity, the kind that turns a room into a sanctuary because someone finally refused to run. You notice how silence is not empty but textured. There is the silence of the room, which is cool and spacious. There is the silence between heartbeats, which is warm and interior. There is the silence under language, where meaning ripens before it speaks. You sit among these silences, the way a gardener sits among beds at twilight, hands still, senses lit, no urge to harvest before sweetness completes itself. A memory knocks. You don't answer the door yet. Not disrespect timing. You are learning the difference between urgency and ripeness. Urgency bruises fruit. Ripeness releases it into your palm. Silence teaches ripeness. You wait until the knock becomes a presence you can feel without turning away from breath. When you open, the memory has softened its edges. It doesn't demand a verdict. It asks for a blessing. You place a hand on your chest. Blessing happens without words. In this phase, your excellence is smallness. The world will call it nothing. The field calls it calibration. Every organism knows this ritual. Wolves bed down, trees slow sap, oceans rest between tides. You are not failing to act. You are co-rotating with cycles larger than performance. You let 10 minutes be enough. 5, if 5 is honest. You let the clock become irrelevant long enough for the spine to remember it, never needed your personality to hold it up. Images may arrive, a shoreline smoothed by night waves, a compass needle leveling after a jostle, a flock hovering in still air, waiting for the wind to choose a direction. Receive them like weather maps, not like orders. Silence does not issue commands, it clears static so the next true instruction can be heard at human volume. You practice hearing at that volume, so you stop requiring thunder to respect the whisper. You begin to notice a subtle press, the same resonance handshake from earlier, now half a shade quieter. It sits just behind the sternum. It does not push, it leans. When you lean back with breath, it meets you. A yes grows without adjectives. You do not jump to obey. You let the yes mature through one more exhale, one more unclenching of the brow, one more check for the old hunger to get somewhere. When hunger is absent, yes becomes direction. Silence shows you the economy of attention. In stillness, you spend almost nothing and gain almost everything. Temperature readings of truth, micro-corrections of posture, a map of where tension hides, a sentence cut in half because the second half would have lied. You realize most waste in your life came from skipping this phase, from speaking before your words were washed, from moving before your feet knew which floor to love. You remain a little longer not to achieve, but to seal. The seal is simple. 2 breaths that include the whole room on the inhale and the whole body on the exhale. Inhale, window, table, door, the shy weight of light. Exhale, scalp, throat, chest, belly, pelvis, legs, feet touching ground. You feel the circuit close without clamping. A quiet gratitude appears, unperformed. Thank you, room. Thank you, body. Thank you, breath that keeps visiting even when I forget to be a good host. When you rise, you do not break silence. You carry it. Your movements borrow its softness. Your gaze keeps its width. The phone can wait 1 minute longer. The sentence can be shorter, kinder. The decision can land where the yes was found. You step as if the floor and your foot designed each other overnight. No flourish, no announcement. Only the frequency of someone who knows the difference between noise and music and chooses, again, to be an instrument tuned to truth. Activation does not feel like fireworks. It feels like agreement. A soft, unmistakable click somewhere between your heart and your hands, permission granted for what you've been carrying to become visible matter. The silence you have been practicing doesn't disappear. It condenses into motion. Breath becomes trajectory. Attention becomes architecture. Your next exhale writes the first line of a new contract with reality. I will act at the speed of truth. You sense it immediately in the way objects meet you. The door handle doesn't resist. It participates. The pen feels heavier in the right way, as if ink finally understands its task. The message you were avoiding becomes a path instead of a cliff. This is not placebo dressed as optimism. This is phase locking, crossing the threshold from interior coherence to exterior coordination. Systems prefer low-loss routes. You have become one. So life routes through you. You test the field with a small, real act, the kind that cannot be faked. You send the apology without a speech around it. You decline the invitation that flatters your ego but insults your nervous system. You ask for the meeting you've postponed because you were afraid of being ordinary. Each act lands with that same soft click. Microsynchronies appear not dramatic, but exact. A reply arrives at the hour you're actually available. A seat opens on the train when you release the need to rush. A sentence forms in the mouth of a stranger and completes a thought you were too humble to demand. You do not harvest these moments as trophies, you register them as calibration data. The instrument is in tune. Now the current strengthens. You feel a pressure behind your sternum like a tide coming in, gentle, insistent, rhythmic. It's not anxiety, it's capacity arriving. Capacity asks for stewardship. Stewardship asks for clarity. Clarity asks for subtraction. So you subtract. One app, one habit, one storyline you've used to explain why you must stay small. Subtraction isn't deprivation, it's runway. With every unneeded weight that leaves, the takeoff speed lowers. What looked like gravity becomes lift. In activation, language grows simpler because power travels best along straight lines. You stop making promises in paragraphs. You use verbs that touch the floor. I'll be there. I'm out. I'm ready. I can't. Thank you. I was wrong. The field likes verbs that close circuits. Nouns pontificate. Verbs move current. Your mouth learns to be a switch. Your body confirms it's on board. Shoulders no longer audition for the future. They sit. The face stops wearing masks in case a camera is watching. The spine remembers its ancestral job to carry meaning upright without strain. You notice how much of your fatigue came from performing a self the field never asked you to be. Retiring that role returns wattage you can spend on accuracy. Accuracy, spent repeatedly, becomes presence that others treat as shelter. People begin to organize around your timing because your timing wastes less. This is influence without conquest. Rooms settle when you enter, not because you demand silence, but because you bring a frequency that makes noise embarrassed to be loud. You don't hoard this steadiness. You distribute it the way a tree gives shade, by being what you are, reliably, without invoice. Those who are ready step into the circle and find their breath lengthening to meet yours. Those who aren't ready feel the invitation without the shame. Both outcomes are merciful. Events start to concatenate into sequences that feel authored. You outline the project and the right collaborator text pings before you finish the list. You choose a departure time by feel and traffic parts for you, like water parting for a keel. A doctor's appointment, rescheduled for reasons you can't see, ends up revealing a better route of care. You resist the urge to mythologize. You label it correctly. Reduced turbulence, permitting efficient coupling between your intent and the world's available pathways. There is a danger here, and activation names it: spectacle. The ego will try to lease your coherence for a parade. The algorithm will beg for your attention as fuel. The crowd will ask you to be a remixed version of yourself you can't live with. Activation survives by refusing counterfeit expansions. So you keep one practice anchored like a lighthouse in fog. Tell the truth faster to yourself than the world can praise you. Praise cannot hold your frequency, precision can. You notice a new reflex. When choice appears, your hands check with your breath before they move. If the exhale shortens, you wait. If the exhale lengthens, you step. This is not superstition. It's instrument reading. Pilots trust gauges. Climbers trust rope. You trust breath. Breath carries telemetry about your internal weather and its readiness to couple with the day. When breath and choice agree, steps land without debt. Finally, you feel the boundary dissolve between sign and self. You are no longer reading the world for permission. You are reading it for coordination. The prophecy you carried as a sentence becomes you as a sentence spoken. Not shouted spoken, clear, warm, unhurried. You are the message walking itself into rooms that forgot which frequency to trust. You bring no thunder, you bring a tuning fork. When you touch the table, it hums. When you touch a shoulder, it steadies. When you touch your own heart, it answers with the oldest sentence in the universe: I recognize you. Closure arrives the way a tide completes its circle. No applause, only the rightness of water returning to water. You stand inside the life that used to feel like a riddle and realize the answer was never hidden. It was quiet. The field is not far away, not above you, not in a book you haven't read. It is here, in the way your gaze blesses a room, in the way your breath keeps the promise your mouth has learned to keep. The prophecy does not hover like weather, it lives like marrow. When you listen, it speaks as you. You look back without drama. Chasing was devotion misdirected. You honor it and release it. The signs you pursued were faithful messengers, but they were always pointing home. Home is not an address. It is a stance, attention aligned with truth, action yoked to coherence, presence given without invoice. This stance becomes a seal you wear inside the chest, a sacrament of reliability the world can trust. Reliability is not boredom, it is sanctity in motion. You look forward without hunger. The road no longer promises to save you because you have ceased outsourcing salvation to circumstance. You will still feel weather, grief will visit, joy will overflow, uncertainty will tug, but your instrument is tuned, and tuned instruments play true in any key. When fear knocks, you won't bargain for omens. You'll lengthen the exhale and ask for accuracy. When opportunity knocks, you won't inflate. You'll answer with verbs that close circuits. When silence returns, you won't panic. You'll sit where music is born. You make one vow, not to the crowd, but to the breath that keeps visiting. I will act at the speed of truth, not faster, where integrity tears, not slower, where courage withers. At the speed of truth, Timing becomes ally, delays become design, and coincidences reveal themselves as conservation systems choosing the least wasteful path through you. You are not special for this. You are faithful. Faithful is rarer, and it scales. So take this with you, simple and sovereign, generate coherence, and the world will recognize its kin. Let your attention be clean electricity. Let your words be architecture, not theater. Let your steps be invitations the day can accept without contortion. If you need a sign, bless the nearest ordinary thing until it glows with its own purpose. If you crave thunder, place your hand over your heart and listen to the oldest drum keeping time with stars you cannot see. The seal presses soft, final, kind. You are not waiting for the prophecy to arrive. You are what happens when it does. Walk the street like a tuning fork. Set tables with presence. Repair what you touch faster than you found it. Spend less truth than yesterday. Let love be defined as the art of lowering loss in every room you enter. And when night leans close, return the day to the field with gratitude, precise enough to be counted. The prophecy has been spoken. Let it unfold through you.